I still remember the late summer light spilling through the kitchen windows that afternoon. Dust floating like tiny galaxies in the warm air. It should have been an ordinary day. I should have been making dinner, arguing with Malik about whose turn it was to take out the trash, laughing at Jordan forcing Cameron to do some TikTok dance he was too shy to do in public. Life should have gone on, but life didn't care what should have happened. It never does. My name is Autumn Carter, and when I was 19 years old, my world crumbled in a way I could have never imagined. My father, Raymond Carter, was the kind of man whose presence filled a room. Strong, patient, a laugh that could drown out a storm. He had worked his way up from nothing, from barefoot summers in Alabama dirt roads to owning a home in a quiet Atlanta suburb. He was proud of that house. It was more than wood, tile, and paint. It was proof that love, discipline, and sacrifice could build something in this world. Before I proceed, I want you to do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and drop your country in the comments. I'd love to know where you're listening to me from. Thank you. Then one August evening, he simply didn't come home from work. The doctor said it was a heart attack. Quick, sudden. There 1 second, gone the next. I remember gripping the edge of the hospital bed, refusing to cry because my brothers were watching. Malik, 15, already too serious for his age. Jordan, 13, with eyes that begged someone to tell him this wasn't real. And Cameron, just 11, whose hands shook as he held my sleeve. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Not then. My stepmother, Angela, loved my father with a devotion that softened everything she touched. After he died, something inside her dimmed. She walked through the house like a shadow of herself, touching his shirts, his tools, his boots, like she was searching for him in the seams. 3 months later, she died in her sleep. The doctor said heart failure. I say it was heartbreak. In 90 days, I became the only parent 3 boys had left. I left college, packed up my dorm, came home and tried to figure out how to breathe while the weight of my new world sank into place. But grief wasn't the only storm waiting for us. The day after Angela's funeral, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to see Uncle Terrence, my father's older brother, tall with a heavy stomach and eyes that never quite matched his smile. Beside him was Aunt Lisa, his wife, wearing the kind of smile that felt too warm to be real. And behind them was Belle, their daughter, who always looked at me like I'd taken something meant for her. Autumn, sweetheart, Aunt Lisa said as if she were speaking to a lost child. We need to discuss the boys in the house. I was tired in my bones, tired in my heart. But something in her tone made a cold thread win through my chest. What about the house? I asked. Uncle Terrence cleared his throat dramatically. Your father didn't leave a will. That means the house and all decisions regarding the minors fall to the adult next of kin. My heartbeat stalled. That's me, I said. I'm their sister, their guardian. Dad discussed this with me. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Autumn, you're 19. You can't take care of yourself, much less 3 boys. And then Belle spoke, her voice like sugared venom. They'd be better off with us. You can visit whenever you like. The words were knives. No, I said. No hesitation, no fear. Just instinct. We're staying together. This house is ours. Something flickered in Uncle Terrence's face then. Calculation, cold, greed, but I didn't understand it. Not yet. The next morning they came back, this time with a lawyer I'd never seen before, Mr. Banks. He carried folders, documents, signatures, stamps, and an air of finality. There is no will, he said. There are debts. This house must be sold to settle them. The boys will be placed with family who can care for them. You can seek visitation, I argued. I begged, I screamed. I said they were wrong. That Dad had shown me his will. That he'd told me everything would be okay. Mr. Banks did not look at me. Not once. Within 7 days, my guardianship was stripped. Within 14 days. The house was listed and sold, and they gave us 3 days to pack our lives into boxes and leave. 3 days to erase the laughter embedded in the walls. 3 days to pretend that childhood wasn't something that could be stolen. That last night in our home, I gathered my brothers into the empty living room. The walls echoed, the home we knew already leaving us. Listen to me, I told them. I don't know what's happening or why, but I promise you this. We are staying together, and I will take care of you, no matter what." Malik nodded, jaw clenched with a grief he refused to show. Jordan asked, "Are we really poor now?" "Yes," I whispered, "but we have each other." Cameron climbed into my lap and sobbed for our father, and in that moment, I made a vow. I would not let the world break us. Not grief, not hunger, not family betrayal, even if I had to bleed to keep them warm. The first night we left the house didn't feel real. The sky was too bright. The world was too loud. Cars passed like nothing had happened, like our lives hadn't just been uprooted and shaken apart. I kept thinking that if I just turned around and walked back, the house would still be there, waiting for us, doors open, porch light glowing warm. But life doesn't work like memory. Once something is taken, it leaves shadows instead of doors. We spent that night in a cheap motel off Highway 78, the kind where the walls smelled like old smoke, and the carpet never felt clean no matter how many times your feet crossed it. My brothers were quiet, too quiet. Boys their age should have been arguing over video games or music, not staring at the ceiling wondering what home meant now. I laid awake while they slept. I kept replaying the conversation with Terrence, trying to find where I could have changed the outcome. Maybe if I'd spoken louder, maybe if I'd cried, maybe if I'd gotten a lawyer myself, but grief fogs the mind. And while I was drowning, they had come prepared. And that was the moment something in me hardened. Grief didn't get to suffocate us anymore. Survival was louder now. The next morning, I took the boys to Waffle House. We ordered the cheapest things, eggs and toast. No one complained. No one asked for more. That silence broke my heart more than hunger ever could. "We're not staying here," I said finally. Malik's brows lifted. "Where are we going to go?" "We'll figure it out," I said. And I meant it. Even if the truth was that I had no idea what came next, I had about $480 to my name. That was it. Tuition refund never came through because I had withdrawn late. Dad's accounts were frozen. Angela hadn't had any separate savings. And the car, Dad's old Chevy, had been repossessed as part of the estate seizure. We walked, miles, for hours, until we reached a small playground behind an elementary school. The boys sat on the swings while I called every number in Dad's old phone. Friends, former co-workers, even distant cousins. Nobody answered. The ones who did offered thoughts and prayers, words that couldn't feed children or shelter them from night air. By sunset, I had one option left, my mother's sister. Aunt Rose, I hadn't spoken to her in years, the kind of years that aren't just distance, but silence. She and my father didn't get along. Two storms that could never share the same sky. But she answered. "Autumn?" Her voice had surprise, confusion, and something gentle buried under it. I didn't cry when Dad died. I didn't cry when Angela died. I didn't cry when we were thrown out of our home. But when she said my name, I broke. "Auntie, can we come stay with you? Just for a while, please." She didn't ask what happened. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Come home." Her house was small, 2 bedrooms, cramped living room, old couch, but warmth lived there. The moment we walked inside, it felt like something loosened in my chest. There were photos everywhere, mismatched mugs, the smell of cinnamon, gospel music humming softly through a radio in the kitchen. It felt lived in, safe. "Boys, you can take my bedroom," she told them. "Autumn, you take the couch." I tried to refuse. She didn't let me. That night, she sat beside me while I stared at the ceiling, just like the night before, but the quiet was different now. "Less empty. Tell me what happened," she said. So I did. I told her everything. The sudden deaths, the eviction, the lawyer, Terrence's cold smile. And when I finished, my aunt closed her eyes and exhaled slow and long. "I knew that man was greedy," she murmured. "But to do this to family?" Her jaw tensed. "Did your father ever talk to you about his accounts?" she asked. I nodded. "He said everything was taken care of, that we'd be okay. He showed me paperwork. A will? Then why didn't it show up?" she asked, voice sharpening. "I don't know," I whispered. But I'd been thinking about it all day. And the answer hit like thunder. Someone had hidden it. Someone had taken the will. Someone had buried his wishes. And someone close, had something big to gain from denying we ever existed. I didn't sleep. Not really. The next morning I searched for jobs. Anything. I walked into stores, restaurants, warehouses. Nobody wanted to hire a 19-year-old with 3 dependents and no transportation. But quitting was no longer an option. I took a job at a 24-hour diner, overnight shift, minimal pay, but enough to keep us afloat. I left at 9 p.m. and came home near sunrise. Aunt Rose made sure the boys were fed, homework done, clothes washed. She became the mother we didn't know we were still allowed to have. Weeks passed. The boys started school again. They made friends, laughed sometimes, ate full meals, grew quieter when Terrence and Lisa came up in conversation, but their eyes grew stronger, not weaker. I was learning how to breathe again. Until one afternoon, Malik came home with a folder in his hands. His face was flushed, angry, electric. "Autumn," he said, placing the papers on the table. "You need to see this." Inside were copies of property records, company shares, trust account transfers, but one detail made my breath freeze. Dad had owned stocks, land, investments, accounts we never knew about. Altogether worth over $100 million, and the beneficiary listed on everything? Me and the boys. Not Terrence, not Lisa. Us, which meant someone had blocked the will. Someone had altered records. Someone had stolen what our father left for us. I stared at the documents, the room silent except for the slow ticking of the clock on the wall. Malik's voice was steady when he spoke. "We're getting it. Back." I looked at him. My little brother who had aged years in weeks. And I realized something. We were no longer just surviving. We were preparing, not for pity, not for forgiveness, but for justice. The world changes quietly before it changes loudly. Before thunder, there is pressure. Before earthquakes, there is a trembling you can barely feel. And before a family war, there is the moment you realize you're no longer afraid. That moment happened at our kitchen table. The documents were spread out like puzzle pieces of a life we never knew we had. Property deeds from Alabama, stock shares in companies I had only seen on billboards, a trust account under our names, never accessed, never touched. The beneficiary signatures were clear as daylight. Dad did plan for us. Dad did leave us protected. Dad had done everything right. But someone else had done everything wrong. Aunt Rose sat with her hands folded, anger simmering beneath her calm. "This isn't just greed," she said. "This is theft, and fraud, and betrayal." Malik leaned forward. "We have to get a lawyer." I had spent the last months learning how to live small, how to stretch $20 into groceries for 4, how to keep the electric bill balanced like a fragile card tower. A lawyer felt impossible. Rich people help. Someone far above our reach. "We can't afford one," I whispered. Aunt Rose's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "You don't need money to get justice," she said. "You just need proof. And you have proof." She stood, walked to her bedroom, and came back holding a leather-bound address book. Old, edges worn, corners fraying. She flipped through the pages carefully, as if flipping through memories. "Your father's best friend," she said, pointing to a name. "Daniel Reese. He's a lawyer. A good one. If anyone can help, it's him." My heart stuttered. Someone who loved Dad. Someone who knew him. Someone who wouldn't ask us to prove our worth. We called, and he answered. We met Daniel the next day in a small office downtown. No fancy skyscraper, no glass windows overlooking the city. Just a quiet room with shelves full of law books and leather-bound papers. He stood when we walked in, gray hair at his temples, eyes tired but warm. "Autumn," he said softly, voice cracking just slightly. "You look just like your father." My throat closed. I couldn't speak. So I just nodded. We showed him everything. The missing will, the altered paperwork, the forced guardianship, the property records proving ownership. He listened. He took notes. He read every page carefully, lips tightening as he did. When he finished, he set the papers down slowly and looked up. "Terrence didn't just take your home," he said. "He committed federal fraud, and he knew exactly what he was doing." Silence filled the room. So what do we do now? Malik asked. Daniel leaned back in his chair. We fight. The fight was not fast. Legal battles never are. There were filings, hearings, statements, investigations. Some days I woke up feeling powerful. Other days I felt like a child pretending to be a storm. But every day we kept going. We learned Terrence had found the will the day Dad died. He hid it. Destroyed copies. Had a lawyer, Mr. Banks. Forged documents declaring the estate unsettled. They sold the house. Sold Dad's cars. Liquidated accounts. And they would have gotten away with everything if we had stayed silent. But we didn't. And our silence had turned into thunder. When the court date came, the courtroom was cold and sterile. Rows of wooden benches, a judge with silver glasses, lawyers with briefcases and slow voices. Terrence wore a suit that looked too expensive for a man who once claimed to be struggling. Lisa sat next to him, spine stiff, chin lifted. Belle wouldn't meet my eyes. We sat on the opposite side. Aunt Rose, my brothers. Daniel beside us, steady as a mountain. When the judge asked Terrence why he had taken guardianship, he spoke with polished sorrow. We only wanted to protect those children, he said. Autumn was too young, too emotional. We feared she would fall apart. Then I rose. I didn't plan a speech. I didn't practice. I spoke from the part of me that remembered holding my brothers in an empty living room. My father trusted me, I said, voice steady. He raised me to protect my family, to love them, to stand beside them. You didn't take us in to help us. You took us in because you knew what he left us. You didn't save us. You abandoned us. Terrence shifted. Lisa paled. Belle looked away again. Daniel handed the judge the documents. Real documents. Original signatures. Proof. Terrence's voice cracked as he tried to speak again, but the room had already seen the truth. And truth, once visible, does not go back into the dark. The ruling didn't take long. The inheritance was restored. Guardianship granted to me. Terrence and Mr. Banks charged. The house returned to our name. The world didn't cheer. There were no applause, but something deeper happened. We got our lives back. Not the same lives, but new ones. Ones we had bled our way into. We moved back into the house the following spring. The walls didn't echo anymore. The rooms weren't empty. They were filled with laughter again. Slow, rebuilding laughter. The kind that comes from learning joy is allowed after pain. The boys grew Malik. Started playing basketball again, Jordan. Joined the art club. Cameron planted roses in the backyard for Angela. I went back to school, but part-time, because life doesn't wait to be convenient. On the first night back in our home, I stood in the living room and whispered into the quiet. We made it. Daddy, outside, the porch light glowed. Inside, warmth lived again, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I cried, not in grief, but in relief, in victory, in love. We had been thrown away, but we were not broken. We were Carters, and Carters do not fall, we rise.